You don't believe me? Aaliyah Jackson whispered, her voice steady yet carrying the weight of months of silent tension as she stood in the soft morning light filtering through the tall windows of the apartment. Ethan Caldwell's figure filled the doorway, his presence commanding even in the quiet, his expression unreadable, a mixture of skepticism and curiosity, and she felt the familiar rush of nerves and defiance entwined in her chest. The baby inside her stirred, a subtle movement that she knew would soon speak louder than any words, and she clutched the small pendant at her neck, a reminder of promises past and truths that refused to stay buried. Ethan took a step closer, the polished hardwood floor reflecting his tailored shoes, and his eyes, a piercing blue, scanned her face as if trying to read the story she had kept to herself for so long. Aaliyah drew a slow breath, letting the golden light catch on her hair, framing her face with an almost cinematic glow, while outside, the city buzzed unaware of the drama unfolding within these walls. The room felt suspended, a bubble where past mistakes, present fears, and future revelations collided. I need to see it, Ethan finally said, his voice low, measured, but underlined with an intensity that made her stomach flip. Without answering, she handed him the ultrasound print, the black and white image trembling slightly between her fingers. His eyes darted to the screen, and then back to hers, searching, doubting, yet a flicker of something else, recognition, passed across his features. Silence stretched, punctuated only by the soft hum of the refrigerator and distant sirens, the city life continuing as if nothing had changed, while in this suspended moment, the world had shifted irreversibly. Ethan's hand hovered just above the print, hesitant, the air between them thick with unspoken questions and emotions, and Aaliyah held his gaze, steady and unwavering, letting her quiet strength speak louder than any plea could. The light shifted slightly as the sun rose higher, casting warm tones across the room, highlighting the gentle curve of her belly and the fine lines of hope and worry etched on her face. In that moment, she realized that the truth she had carried silently for months would finally confront the man who had doubted her, and though fear tinged her relief, she felt an unfamiliar surge of empowerment. Ethan's lips parted slightly, a breath caught between shock and awe, and his usual composed demeanor faltered for a fraction of a second, revealing the human beneath the billionaire exterior. The camera of the mind's eye lingered on the small, miraculous image, the tiny shape of the baby mirroring traits he couldn't ignore, and Aaliyah sensed the pivot in their story approaching, a quiet turning point pregnant with possibility. The tension remained, a delicate balance of anticipation and restrained emotion, and as she drew her hand back, letting him linger on the truth, she knew this was only the beginning of a journey that would force Ethan to reconcile his doubts, acknowledge his responsibilities, and perhaps finally understand the strength and dignity of the woman standing before him. The morning light shifted, spilling across the living room in warm streams, and Ethan Caldwell remained frozen in place, the ultrasound print still in his hand, his usual confidence tempered by a swirl of disbelief and an unspoken realization. Aaliyah Jackson stood a few steps away, her posture calm yet resolute, the subtle curve of her belly catching the golden light, a quiet declaration of the truth she had carried alone for months. The city outside buzzed with life, indifferent to the intimate revelation unfolding within the apartment, and for a moment, time seemed to pause, the air thick with the weight of expectation. Ethan set the print down on the polished wooden table, his fingers lingering over it, tracing the outline of the tiny form with a mixture of awe and hesitation, and the soft hum of the refrigerator became the only sound accompanying the charged silence between them. Aaliyah shifted slightly, her eyes never leaving his, letting the tension stretch and fill the space with unspoken words and emotions. She took a slow breath, steadying herself, and whispered, "He has your eyes, Ethan. I know it is difficult to see, but the truth cannot be denied." The words hung in the air, resonating with a quiet authority that demanded acknowledgement, and Ethan felt the walls of skepticism he had built slowly begin to crumble. He walked closer, his gaze fixed on the gentle rise and fall of her abdomen, the subtle movements beneath the fabric signaling life and connection, and in that movement, he saw undeniable proof of their bond and the child they had brought into the world together. The tension began to shift. transforming from confrontation to contemplation, as Ethan's usual meticulous composure gave way to the fragile edges of vulnerability, his voice lower now, tinged with wonder. I never imagined I could be so wrong. Aaliyah allowed a small, knowing smile to touch her lips, her heart steady despite the storm of emotions she had endured, and she could sense the change in him, the beginning of recognition and acceptance that had been long overdue. She reached out, her hand brushing his, a simple gesture loaded with significance, a bridge of trust forming quietly between them, and Ethan's eyes softened, the familiar intensity replaced by a dawning appreciation of the reality he could no longer deny. Outside, the city continued in its ceaseless rhythm, the distant honks and hums a reminder that life moved forward, but within the walls of the apartment, the world had narrowed to this shared moment, where truth and reconciliation began to take root. Aaliyah's voice broke the silence again, calm and measured. It was never about proving you wrong, Ethan. It was always about the baby, about showing you the love and responsibility that comes with it. The sincerity in her tone resonated deeply, and Ethan felt a shift within himself, the arrogance of doubt giving way to reflection and a tentative willingness to embrace the responsibilities he had once avoided. He leaned slightly, studying her face with careful attention, noting the strength and dignity she carried despite the months of uncertainty and social pressures. And he realized that this child, their child, represented more than resemblance. It was a symbol of connection, trust, and the bridge between past mistakes and future possibilities. Aaliyah stepped closer, the soft fabric of her dress brushing lightly against the smooth floor, and Ethan's gaze followed, his breath measured, as though the gravity of the moment required deliberate presence. The light continued to play across the room, highlighting her steady hands and the subtle rise of anticipation in her expression, and he understood that acknowledgement was not just an act of acceptance, but the first step toward building a future he had previously failed to imagine. In that quiet morning, filled with the gentle sounds of a waking city, Ethan reached for her hand, and for the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to fully absorb the reality before him, the undeniable proof of life, of connection, and of a truth that could no longer be ignored. As Aaliyah met his gaze with quiet confidence, a promise of patience and dignity, leaving the story of their reconciliation and the unfolding journey of parenthood suspended in the tender morning light. The afternoon sun poured through the tall windows, casting long, warm streaks across the apartment, and Ethan Caldwell remained by the table, his hand brushing the smooth surface as if grounding himself in the reality he could no longer deny. Aaliyah Jackson sat on the couch, the soft fabric folding around her as she cradled her growing belly, her eyes calm and steady, reflecting both patience and quiet strength. The city outside hummed with life, cars moving in rhythm, pedestrians weaving through the streets. Yet inside, time seemed suspended, each heartbeat echoing the tension and anticipation between them. Ethan finally spoke, his voice low and deliberate. I need to understand everything. Aaliyah nodded slightly, the corners of her lips lifting just enough to signal trust, and began recounting the months that had led to this moment, the subtle glances, the careful planning, and the unwavering determination to protect the child they had created. As she spoke, Ethan listened intently, the usual walls of his authority giving way to genuine curiosity and reflection, each word layering into the fabric of his awakening. The soft afternoon light caught on the delicate features of her face, emphasizing the resolve etched into her expression, and he realized that every moment of doubt he had carried now seemed both unnecessary and instructive, shaping the man he needed to become. The pendant around Aaliyah's neck glimmered with each movement, a symbol of her resilience and the quiet power she held, and Ethan's gaze lingered, absorbing the gravity of the trust she had placed in him. The baby stirred again, a gentle shift that sent a ripple of tenderness through both of them, and Ethan found himself involuntarily reaching out, his fingers brushing against Aaliyah's hand in a tentative connection, a silent acknowledgement of shared responsibility. The room was filled with the soft, ambient noises of life, the distant horn of a taxi, the hum of air conditioning, the subtle creak of the floorboards beneath Ethan's weight, as though even the smallest details conspired to underscore the intimacy of the moment. He took a careful step closer, his expression softening, and whispered, "I do not want to miss a single step of this journey." Aaliyah's smile widened just slightly, a combination of relief and quiet victory, as she recognized the sincerity behind his words, the sincerity that promised a shift from doubt to presence. The golden light of the afternoon seemed to embrace them, highlighting the small movements, the shared breaths, the unspoken understanding that had begun to form between them. Ethan leaned against the back of the couch, studying her with a mixture of awe and cautious anticipation, noting the subtle changes in her expression with each word, each pause, each gesture, and he felt the weight of his previous misconceptions lift, replaced by the gravity of connection and responsibility. Aaliyah's voice remained calm, patient, yet firm, guiding him through the truths that could no longer be ignored, and the atmosphere was charged with a quiet intensity, as though every breath they took together was a step toward reconciliation. The sunlight shifted further, bathing the room in a warmer, softer glow, accentuating the bond that was forming, the fragile beginnings of trust and mutual recognition, and Ethan realized that this was more than acknowledgement. It was the start of partnership, of co-parenting, of shared accountability that demanded attention, presence, and care. As he finally allowed himself to fully absorb the scene before him, the baby's gentle movements, Aaliyah's unwavering gaze, and the weight of truth that had settled between them, he understood that this was not merely a moment of revelation but a turning point, a quiet emergence of responsibility, and the promise of a journey in which doubt would be replaced by recognition, presence, and the silent, steadfast power of trust. Evening settled gently over the city, the warm amber light filtering through the tall windows, and Ethan Caldwell remained seated near the couch, his hands clasped together as he absorbed the quiet revelation that had unfolded over the day. Aaliyah Jackson moved with measured grace, her eyes soft yet unwavering, tending to the small arrangements in the apartment as if orchestrating a calm rhythm to balance the emotions that had swelled between them. The soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant murmur of traffic outside created a subtle backdrop, framing the intimate space in which trust and recognition were slowly taking root. Ethan finally lifted his gaze, meeting Aaliyah's calm and steady eyes, and spoke with a deliberate softness that carried both sincerity and newfound humility. "I have been blind to so much, and I see it now." Aaliyah nodded, a gentle acknowledgement passing between them, and the atmosphere thickened with unspoken understanding, the realization that their connection, though strained by doubt and fear, had endured. She moved closer, the subtle swish of her dress against the floor punctuating the quiet as she extended her hand, an invitation to partnership and shared responsibility, and Ethan took it, feeling the shift in the room, the transition from uncertainty to a tentative unity. The baby stirred, a soft flutter that seemed to echo the rhythm of their hearts, and Ethan leaned slightly, allowing a slow, careful touch to rest on Aaliyah's belly, a gesture both tender and grounding, connecting him to the life they had brought into the world together. Sunlight fading into the cooler tones of dusk painted the room in gentle contrasts, highlighting the careful expressions, the measured movements, and the delicate balance of emotions that now defined their interaction. Ethan's voice broke the silence again, quieter now, reflective. "I want to understand every step, every moment that led us here." Aaliyah smiled faintly, her eyes glimmering with quiet pride and reassurance, as she recounted the small victories and challenges of the past months, the patient endurance, and the careful protection of truth and dignity. Each word layered onto the atmosphere like soft brushstrokes, and Ethan absorbed them, his gaze tracing her features, noting the subtle lines of resilience and the unwavering commitment that had carried her through uncertainty. The pendant around her neck caught the last light of the sun, glinting gently, a symbol of steadfastness, and Ethan felt the weight of past mistakes dissolve slightly under the warmth of acknowledgement and presence. Their hands remained connected, a tangible anchor between them, bridging the gap that skepticism and fear had once formed, and as the shadows lengthened, they moved in sync through the room, navigating conversations, small gestures, and the unspoken language of trust that had begun to define their dynamic. Aaliyah's voice remained calm, guiding, yet firm, leading him to recognize the depth of responsibility and the quiet strength that resided not only in her, but in the life they had created together. The city outside glimmered with lights reflecting the slow onset of night, while within, Ethan and Aaliyah continued their measured dance of recognition, understanding, and acceptance, each shared breath reinforcing the beginnings of a partnership grounded in truth and mutual respect. As the evening deepened, the room held a serene energy, charged not with tension but with potential, a promise of shared moments, deliberate choices, and the quiet emergence of a family ready to face the future together, anchored in honesty, patience, and the unspoken bond that had taken root through the day. The night deepened over the city, the skyline shimmering with distant lights reflecting off the glass towers, and within the apartment, Ethan Caldwell and Aaliyah Jackson moved through a quiet rhythm of newfound understanding. Ethan, still seated near the window, traced the faint outlines of the city below with his gaze, while Aaliyah organized the small nursery corner, soft golden lamplight illuminating the gentle curve of her form and the careful arrangements she had prepared for the child they would soon welcome. The air carried a calm, almost reverent quality, the hum of traffic and the occasional siren a distant accompaniment to the intimate scene unfolding, and Ethan felt the weight of his past doubts slowly lifting as he observed her focus and resilience. "I did not realize how much I had overlooked," he admitted, his voice low but carrying the depth of sincere reflection, and Aaliyah glanced at him, her eyes softening with the faintest smile, acknowledging both the honesty and the vulnerability that had emerged. She moved closer, the soft steps on the polished hardwood floor echoing lightly, and offered her hand again, a gesture of partnership that extended beyond words, inviting him into the shared responsibilities and quiet joys that awaited. Ethan took her hand, and for a brief moment, the apartment seemed suspended in warm, golden light, each breath and subtle movement magnified by the intimacy of recognition and acceptance. The baby stirred gently, a soft movement that reminded them both of the life they were bringing into the world, and Ethan rested his hand lightly on her belly, feeling the delicate motion and absorbing the sense of wonder and responsibility it conveyed. The evening air shifted subtly as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the floor and accentuating the lines of patience and determination on Aaliyah's face. And Ethan noticed the strength and calm she carried, a quiet power that had endured months of uncertainty. He spoke again, voice steady and deliberate. "I want to be present for every moment, for everything that is to come." And Aaliyah nodded, her eyes glimmering with a mixture of relief, pride, and quiet anticipation, understanding that his words marked the beginning of a tangible commitment rather than just acknowledgement. Their hands remained intertwined, a physical reminder of connection and trust, and the gentle movements of the baby seemed to echo the emerging rhythm of their partnership, a subtle yet powerful manifestation of life, hope, and shared purpose. Outside, the city pulsed with ordinary life, unaware of the profound developments occurring in this apartment, while inside, each shared glance, soft word, and delicate gesture built the foundation of a relationship grounded in respect, responsibility, and the acknowledgement of past mistakes. Ethan's eyes followed Aaliyah's deliberate actions as she adjusted the small blankets and toys, the light reflecting off the polished surfaces, capturing the care and thoughtfulness embedded in every detail. And he felt a quiet admiration for the way she balanced strength and grace with the anticipation of the new life they were about to nurture together. The lamplight shifted, casting a warm glow over the apartment, highlighting the serene expressions on both their faces, and the silence between them was filled not with tension but with possibility, understanding, and the tender beginnings of a family united by truth, patience, and a quiet, shared strength that promised a future defined by connection, care, and the subtle yet profound presence of love. The soft glow of the morning sun spilled into the apartment, illuminating Ethan Caldwell's contemplative face as he stood by the window, gazing out at the city that stretched endlessly beyond the glass. Aaliyah Jackson moved quietly behind him, arranging a small stack of baby clothes and blankets, each fold deliberate and tender, her movements reflecting the care and patience she had cultivated throughout months of anticipation and uncertainty. The room hummed with life in subtle ways. The faint ticking of a wall clock, the distant sound of early traffic, and the gentle rustle of fabric as Aaliyah shifted slightly, her eyes catching the sunlight in a quiet glimmer of hope. Ethan turned from the window, his expression softening as he watched her, the weight of his previous doubts replaced with a sense of responsibility and a deepening appreciation for the resilience she embodied. He took a careful step forward, reaching out to touch the edge of the blanket she held, and Aaliyah's eyes met his, steady and calm, signaling trust and acknowledgement without the need for words. The baby inside her stirred gently, and Ethan placed his hand over her belly, feeling the subtle movements, a living testament to the undeniable connection they shared. And in that moment, the enormity of his own role as a father became vividly clear. The light in the room shifted as the sun rose higher, casting warm, golden tones across the carefully arranged nursery corner, accentuating the details Aaliyah had prepared with such meticulous care, and Ethan found himself absorbing the significance of every small element, every thoughtful touch that reflected her dedication and love. Their shared silence spoke volumes, a quiet understanding developing between them, bridging past misunderstandings and fostering a tentative, yet growing, bond built on truth and mutual respect. Ethan spoke softly, his voice deliberate and reflective. "I want to be here, truly present, every step of the way." And Aaliyah nodded, a subtle smile conveying her quiet pride and relief, recognizing the sincerity in his words and the intention behind them. The city outside continued its steady rhythm, oblivious to the intimate developments unfolding within the apartment, while inside, the air was charged with the gentle tension of new beginnings, a mixture of anticipation, responsibility, and emerging trust. Ethan moved closer, his hand brushing lightly against hers, grounding the connection and solidifying the unspoken promise that had taken root. Aaliyah's movements remained calm and composed as she guided him through small tasks, each instruction layered with subtle reminders of patience, care, and the importance of their shared responsibilities, reinforcing the developing partnership that now defined their interaction. The sunlight continued to fill the space, highlighting their faces and expressions, the delicate gestures and soft tones of their voices creating an atmosphere of calm intimacy and deliberate focus. Each breath, each glance, and each movement became a silent affirmation of trust, of presence, and of the quiet strength that Aaliyah carried with such grace. Ethan felt a deepening sense of commitment, the clarity of understanding and appreciation settling over him like a warm embrace, and he realized that this was not only a journey of parenthood, but also of reconciliation, respect, and the cultivation of a bond that would endure through the uncertainties and joys of the life they were building together. The morning continued to unfold gently around them, filled with light, movement, and quiet reflection, as both acknowledged the importance of each moment, the weight of truth, and the shared promise of a future defined by care, attentiveness, and the patient nurturing of trust and connection. The soft light of late afternoon filled the apartment, casting long, warm shadows across the carefully arranged nursery, and Ethan Caldwell stood near the window, his eyes following the faint movements of Aaliyah Jackson as she tidied the last of the baby clothes, each motion deliberate and graceful. The city beyond the glass hummed with life, a distant symphony of car horns and murmured conversations, yet inside, the air was dense with quiet understanding and the emerging rhythm of trust between them. Ethan took a careful step toward her, the polished hardwood floor reflecting his presence as he reached out, lightly brushing his hand over hers, a gesture of connection and acknowledgement that required no words. Aaliyah's eyes met his, calm and composed, conveying a subtle mix of reassurance and expectation, and she smiled faintly, the soft curve of her lips reflecting months of patience and steadfast resolve. The baby shifted gently inside her, a small ripple of life that brought both of them into an immediate awareness of shared responsibility and the tangible miracle of the life they had created together. Ethan's gaze softened as he placed a hand over her belly, feeling the tiny movements and allowing himself to absorb the profound sense of presence, connection, and accountability that he had previously underestimated. The golden light continued to spill across the room, illuminating the folds of the blankets, the soft textures of the nursery furniture, and the careful attention Aaliyah had given to every detail, each element a testament to her dedication, care, and thoughtful planning. Their voices were soft, measured, each word deliberate, as Ethan asked questions about preparations, about daily routines, about moments that required attention, and Aaliyah responded with patience, guidance, and gentle instruction, layering understanding and trust into the fabric of their interaction. He listened intently, absorbing not only the practicalities but the meaning behind each action, realizing that parenthood required not only presence but awareness, empathy, and the willingness to be guided by the steady wisdom of someone who had nurtured both life and resilience. The afternoon shadows lengthened, accentuating the warmth of the lamplight and the subtle interplay of light across their expressions, and Ethan found himself drawn into the quiet beauty of the moment, the ordinary yet profound unfolding of responsibility and connection. He moved closer, allowing a tentative touch here, a careful gesture there, reinforcing the bond that had begun to form through weeks of tension, revelation, and cautious reconciliation. Aaliyah's eyes never left his, steady and affirming, reflecting the trust she was extending and the patient expectation that he would rise to meet it. The city beyond continued its indifferent rhythm, but within the apartment, every breath, every glance, every subtle movement contributed to the deepening intimacy of understanding and the shared anticipation of the child they would soon embrace. Ethan's voice broke the silence again, calm and sincere. "I am ready to learn, to be present, and to do right by both of you." And Aaliyah nodded, the corners of her eyes glinting with relief and quiet pride. The sunlight shifted to a warmer hue as the day edged toward evening, illuminating the small details, the curve of the crib, the neatly folded blankets, the soft glimmer of a pendant worn close to the heart. And Ethan understood that every element symbolized not just preparation but care, thoughtfulness, and a gentle assertion of presence that he was now committed to honoring. Together, they moved through the apartment, coordinating tasks, sharing soft words, and experiencing the subtle movements of trust forming into partnership, each gesture reinforcing the silent promise of support, guidance, and a shared journey of life, parenthood, and mutual respect, while the gentle glow of the late afternoon bathed the room in warmth, highlighting their careful navigation of new roles and the quiet emergence of a family united by truth, patience, and unwavering dignity. The soft glow of early evening settled over the apartment, painting the nursery in shades of gold and amber as Ethan Caldwell stood near the doorway, his gaze following Aaliyah Jackson as she adjusted the small stack of folded clothes and gently placed a mobile above the crib. The city outside pulsed with the quiet rhythm of approaching night, the distant hum of traffic and occasional sirens providing a subtle background to the intimate space within, where the anticipation of new life and the weight of shared responsibility filled every corner. Ethan took a slow, deliberate step closer, his fingers brushing lightly against the edge of the crib as he absorbed the careful details she had arranged with such thoughtfulness, each item reflecting her care, patience, and vision for the future they would share as parents. Aaliyah paused, glancing at him with steady eyes that conveyed both trust and gentle expectation, a quiet reminder that the journey they were embarking on required presence, attention, and mutual understanding. The baby stirred gently within her, a subtle movement that resonated through both of them, and Ethan placed a hand lightly over her belly, feeling the small ripples of life that symbolized not only connection but the responsibility he was beginning to embrace fully. The soft light from the window shifted as the sun dipped lower, casting long, warm shadows across the floor and highlighting the subtle expressions of hope, care, and determination on Aaliyah's face. And Ethan recognized the strength she carried, a quiet power that had endured months of uncertainty and societal pressure. Their voices were calm, deliberate, and measured as Ethan asked about preparations, routines, and small details, and Aaliyah responded with patience, guidance, and clarity, reinforcing the foundations of trust, understanding, and shared purpose that were forming between them. Each gesture, glance, and movement became a silent dialogue, layering reassurance and mutual respect into the fabric of their interaction, as Ethan gradually absorbed the full scope of what it meant to step into his role as both a father and a partner. The golden tones of the room illuminated the small details of the nursery, the soft textures of blankets, the neatly arranged toys, the delicate folds of clothing, and each item reflected Aaliyah's dedication, thoughtfulness, and quiet assertion of the life and care she had nurtured within her. Ethan leaned slightly closer, adjusting a mobile with careful hands while his eyes remained on her, noting the subtle lines of resilience and strength that marked her expression and movements. And he realized that presence and attentiveness were as important as words or promises in building the connection they now shared. The evening deepened, and the warm lamplight mingled with fading sunlight, casting a serene glow that highlighted the soft contours of their shared space and the gentle, patient energy that had come to define it. Ethan's voice broke the silence, calm and sincere. "I will be here for every moment, for every step." And Aaliyah nodded, her eyes reflecting relief, quiet pride, and the sense that their partnership was taking root in authenticity and mutual commitment. The city outside continued its unceasing rhythm, yet inside, the apartment became a haven of understanding, trust, and the gentle beginnings of family life. Each shared glance, gesture, and movement affirming the promise of presence, care, and the unwavering commitment to navigate the path ahead together with dignity, patience, and steady strength. Every breath, subtle movement, and quiet word between them reinforced the sense that the life they had created was not only a bond between parent and child, but also a testament to patience, resilience, and the emerging unity that would guide them through the coming days, weeks, and months as they built the foundation of a family grounded in love, truth, and unwavering respect. The early morning light filtered softly through the apartment, casting a gentle glow across the nursery as Ethan Caldwell stood near the crib, his eyes tracing the details Aaliyah Jackson had so carefully arranged over the past weeks. The city outside was awakening, its distant hum blending with the quiet rhythm of the apartment, creating a serene backdrop for the tender moments unfolding within. Aaliyah moved gracefully around the room, adjusting a small mobile above the crib and smoothing the folds of a blanket with deliberate care, her eyes reflecting both anticipation and a quiet sense of accomplishment. Ethan approached her slowly, his hands hovering over the crib before settling lightly on its edge, the warmth of his presence grounding both of them in the significance of the day. The baby stirred gently within her, and Ethan placed a hand over her belly, feeling the delicate movements and allowing himself to absorb the profound reality of the life they had created together. The soft light highlighted the meticulous details of the nursery, the neatly arranged toys, the soft textures of blankets, the subtle glimmer of a pendant Aaliyah always wore close to her heart, and each element reinforced the care, thoughtfulness, and patience she had brought to this shared journey. Their voices were calm and measured as Ethan asked questions about routines and preparations, and Aaliyah responded with steady guidance, each word reinforcing the trust and partnership that had grown steadily between them. He listened intently, absorbing not only the practical advice, but also the underlying lesson in patience, responsibility, and shared care that her words conveyed, recognizing that parenthood demanded attentiveness, empathy, and a willingness to be present in every moment. The light continued to shift as the sun rose higher, casting a warm glow across their faces and highlighting the expressions of quiet determination, hope, and mutual respect that defined their interaction. Ethan moved slightly closer, his fingers brushing against hers in a gesture that spoke volumes, reinforcing the connection and emerging bond that had developed through weeks of shared experience and understanding. The baby shifted again, a gentle ripple of life that echoed the rhythm of their hearts and reminded them both of the profound responsibility and joy awaiting them. Outside, the city carried on in its steady pulse, oblivious to the quiet yet transformative moments within the apartment, while inside, every glance, gesture, and shared breath deepened their partnership and strengthened the foundation of trust and care that would guide them forward. Ethan's voice broke the silence, calm and sincere. "I want to be present for everything, to never miss a single moment." and Aaliyah's eyes softened, her faint smile conveying relief, quiet pride, and anticipation for the future they were about to build together. The golden morning light bathed the room in warmth, illuminating their movements and expressions, and the subtle interplay of gestures, words, and shared understanding created an atmosphere filled with possibility, patience, and the tender emergence of family life. Each detail, the careful folds of a blanket, the glint of a toy, the gentle rise and fall of Aaliyah's breathing, became a marker of connection, trust, and the shared promise of responsibility. Ethan and Aaliyah continued to move through the apartment in quiet harmony, coordinating small tasks, sharing soft words, and attending to the gentle movements of the baby, each moment reinforcing their bond and the beginning of a life defined by attentiveness, love, and unwavering commitment. As the sun continued to rise, casting longer, softer rays across the nursery, both of them felt the weight of the journey they had undertaken, the fulfillment of a shared promise, and the tender anticipation of the days ahead. Their hearts aligned in the patient, deliberate cultivation of trust, care, and the quiet power of presence, preparing them to embrace the responsibilities and joys of parenthood with dignity, respect, and enduring connection.